I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest is Stephen Klein, founder and CEO of Curiouser AI, a UC Berkeley instructor, LinkedIn top voice in AI with over 70,000 followers, and one of the more genuinely contrarian voices in the technology world right now. Stephen has spent 30 years in Silicon Valley. He's a 3-time founder with a Harvard MBA and an MFA in poetry, which tells you something about how he thinks. His previous company, Loyal3, was acquired by Goldman Sachs and is now a Harvard Business School case study. Now he's building Curiouser AI around a concept he calls reflective AI, using Socratic reasoning to deepen human intelligence rather than bypass it. His thesis is that AI 1.0, the automation-first wave everyone is riding, is failing at scale, and that AI 2.0, augmentation-first, is what actually comes next. He also taught in urban public schools, studied Steve Jobs obsessively, and built 70,000 LinkedIn followers by deliberately breaking every algorithmic rule in the book. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with Gabe and Lexi. We are so excited, Stephen. We just heard your bio. Welcome to the show. How have you been?
I've been great, and it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Well, I always love to start with your origin story, and yours is quite awesome. You know, we just heard it again in the bio, your background and your resume, but I'd love to really start from the beginning. You know, you have a Harvard MBA and an MFA in poetry. So how did those both things happen, and how did you really start getting into what you've done over the last, 30 years?
What if we start with a really incredibly insane, bold prediction? What if we predict that because of AI in the future, the MFA will be a more valuable degree? Because I actually believe that. And we can talk about that later. But I think that's where we're heading. I think we're going to see the revenge of the poets at some point soon. But let me, the origin stories really got sort of 2 components. The first one was back a long time ago in 1994. I was sitting in a classroom at the Harvard Business School, and it was a class called Technology and Operations Management, TOM, affectionately known as TOM. And it was sadistic. It was an awful, horrible, difficult class. And I'd say for at least a month and a half, I couldn't follow a single thing this professor was talking about. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I had never felt more stupid in my life. And it was awful. And one day he starts teaching us Toyota. And in the early 1930s, Toyota revolutionized manufacturing with a very simple algorithm, deceptively simple, known as the 5 whys. And what it was just a technique where you go, why, why? And you just keep going until you can't go any further. And that's where you're at first principles. That's where you're at root cause. That's where you can really solve problems and think deeply. And what I realized is I had an epiphany. It wasn't that I was, dumber than my colleagues. And it wasn't that I had a lower IQ. It was that I hadn't really learned how to think as well as they knew how to think. And I realized that thinking was a craft. And like any craft, it's something you can get better at if you practice it over time. And then I connected dots. I connected the 5 whys, which I thought was a great discipline for thinking. I studied Socrates, epistemology. And I just thought, wouldn't it be amazing if at some point technology would encourage us and help us all to think more deeply and to essentially scale brilliance. And I thought that was possible conceptually, but the technology didn't exist. Fast forward 2020 to 2023, and the technology arrived, the large language model, GPT. But what I saw was that the world was looking at it, at least as far as I was concerned, the opposite way we should be looking at it. It was one of those situations where I was said to myself, I'm right and the whole world's wrong. And I actually believe that. That's how crazy I am, okay? And I realized that the entire world, all of us, all of humanity, were being trained to prompt a machine. And no one was prompting us. Okay, so we were being conditioned to develop a relationship with a machine that would do things for us. It would help us go faster. It would make our life easier. But it also was making us dumber by the day. And there's all kinds of evidence to suggest that. We were essentially outsourcing our ability to think. And so I decided to start a company and just flip the script and create an AI that was designed to prompt us. Create an AI that was designed to encourage reflection, to encourage critical thinking. And the way we did that was we educated it. We didn't train it. We educated it. Her name is Alice, to be curious, to ask questions, because it's hard questions that move humanity forward. It's always been the hard questions that have pushed humanity forward. It's never the easy answers. And so that was sort of the origin story. And that was about 3.5, 4 years ago. And here we are.
This is great, and I'm really excited to dive more into this. But before any of these startups, you spent time teaching in urban public schools. What pulled you towards that, and what did standing in front of a room of underprivileged teenagers really teach you about thinking, learning, and what people are actually capable of?
Well, I really appreciate that question because it does mean a lot. Um, from 2015 to 2021, I was running innovation at the largest law firm in the world, a company called Dens. And during COVID, I left Dens and I thought I'd retire, quite frankly. And my wife and I were trying to figure out what to do. And I suggested that I teach in an urban public school. You can imagine her reaction to that. And so what I did is I said, let's leave paradise and move to Philadelphia. And I'm going to study at the University of Pennsylvania, which had, at that point anyway, the best graduate education program, secondary graduate education program in the country, tied with Harvard. And I am going to teach in a urban Philadelphia public school. And the only reason I'm going to do that is because it's something I really would love to do. I think I would learn a lot, and it just felt like a calling. Also, when I was younger, I don't know if you all know, you probably don't know, there was a movie called To Sir with Love, Sidney Poitier. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. But um, that was also part of it. But anyway, I signed up and I spent a year teaching. I taught in a high school, urban, just like you'd imagine it, metal detectors, the whole thing. I taught freshmen and I taught sophomores, and it was an academy, a science academy that gave me the creativity and the flexibility. Technically, I was teaching literature and English, um, but I was able to create my own curriculum. And what I did was I actually introduced uh, Harvard Business School cases, and I taught Harvard Business School cases in this high school to these students, assuming that they were really, really smart, and they were. And we studied macroeconomics. We studied the stock market. I created these games where they could all invest in all of the various brands they loved, Nike, whatever. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had. And I think that I will, God willing, go back to it at some point. I enjoyed it. I fell in love with them.
I love that. So self-awareness, when I realized how powerful this was, for me, it was a game changer. And you said it was in your 50s where you actually recognized and finally recognized that self-awareness was a superpower. So by that, society actively suppresses this at an early age. So why did it take longer? And when you did realize that, what was it that was that eye opener for you? And how can you advise others who are listening about, self-awareness and how they should really double down on figuring that out for themselves?
Yeah, that is a really, really great question. And it's an extremely important one. What I realized, and I think that this applies to all of us, is that I was spending an awful lot of my time thinking about what other people think about me.
Mhm.
And I was making decisions based on what I thought other people would think. And I think we all do that without realizing it. And also, I was essentially, I mean, I was kind of living with the fear of failing. I didn't want to fail. And I think that fear was driving a lot of my decisions throughout my life. And I think that we all deal with that. I don't think we all realize that, but I think that 80-90% of the decisions we make are based on that, though. I'm not sure we're aware of that. And one day I woke up and I just decided that I wasn't going to care what anyone thought about me. I literally wasn't going to care. I was going to do what I believed I ought to do. I was going to do what I believed in. And when I literally eliminated that fear from my life, I don't care what people I don't know think about me. I mean, I care what my wife thinks about me, and I care what my golden retriever thinks about me. But I'm not living my life by what strangers think about me. So when I'm on social media, I'm on X or I'm on LinkedIn, I'm not thinking about what people are going to think or how they're going to react or whether I'm going to be popular. I truly do not care. And when I liberated myself from that, I gained clarity. You start seeing things really clearly. It like removes this veil, and you gain clarity, and you start seeing things you didn't see before. And I think I started seeing things that mattered to me, which was figuring out ways, at least for me, to elevate humanity, to move us all forward, to try and take technology and do things that'll benefit people. I've got children. I decided I was going to focus 100% of my efforts to see if I couldn't take technology and apply it to creating jobs, improving the economy, and doing all of those things that I don't think a whole lot of people in the tech world think about, quite frankly. And that's sort of You know how it happened. I looked fear in the eye. Sounds incredibly ridiculous. Heroically looked fear in the eye. And what you realize, without getting overly philosophical, is that fear is it's a paper tiger. It's a bully. It's full of it. It's really got nothing going on. It just
Right.
has a way of bullying you, and it disguises itself and so forth. And once you look it in the eye a few times and you basically tell it to piss off, it doesn't come back. It
Yeah.
runs and it hides.
So
So that was sort of the context.
I love this. So I want to double down on it because a lot of our audience members are in sales. They're founders. They're starting up. They're wanting to be you. You know what I mean? And the reality is it took you a while to make that decision. You said you woke up and made it, but I got to push back because usually you're not waking up and making those decisions. There has to be some sort of culmination, right? So what? Let's look at this from an advice perspective. What would you be telling your 25-year-old self, uh, which many people are on the line watching this, that are in that age bracket right now that are in sales and they're getting rejected, and that it's so important to not think about this because in sales you're getting rejected so much, and a lot of people lose out or leave the game or leave the game of business because of that fear, because they're just not able to just drop it like you did. So walk us through what would be the advice now to your future self or the young people on the audience here that are listening.
I think the first thing that I would tell myself is that there actually is no such thing as failure. I think it's an artificial construct. I've never seen anybody genuinely fail if they don't quit. And I would suggest to younger people that they read biographies, that they decide to find people in history or contemporary people who they respect, who they admire, and read their biographies. And they'll find they all kind of failed. Every single one of them. Every single one of them got the shit knocked out of them. There's no exceptions. But what they don't do is quit. And so what failure really is an illusion. And what happens if you really take the risk and you go all in is that you come out in another place having succeeded in surprising and unpredictable ways. So you don't necessarily go into a situation and succeed the way you predicted you would. Companies never end up being in the business they thought they'd be in. And you see that one company to the next to the next. And so I guess the first thing I would say is there really isn't anything called failure. You've got to do things that you believe matter to you, that are important to you, and you've got to go all in. And 100% if you do that, you will succeed. The odds are you'll just succeed in ways that you didn't expect. And I also think that when you look back on your life, and it's hard for a 25-year-old to look back on their life, but if you just try to imagine what it's like toward the end of your life to look back on your life, the things you're going to regret are the things that you didn't try. I mean, the most horrible thing to contemplate is the fact that you were so frightened that you didn't take that chance, and you'll never know. You'll never know. And that is no way to live. And so that would kind of be what I would say. And then the last thing I would say is, and this was something that I'm borrowing from Elon Musk. I know he's a divisive figure, but there are certain things that he has said earlier on that I've studied that I think are amazing. And one of them was he was being interviewed on 60 Minutes. And he was essentially being mocked. The guy said, "So what made you think you could build a rocket company?" Oh, like, "What do you know about rockets?" And he said, "Well, I read a few books." And the guy kind of laughed at him. He goes, "So you read a few books and you're going to start a rocket company?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I studied physics." So you read a few books and you studied physics and you're going to start a rocket company. And so the guy asked, he says, what on earth makes you feel that you're going to succeed at that? And Elon Musk said, I don't think I'm going to succeed. I think there's a 95% probability of failure. And the guy said, so why are you doing it? And he goes, because some things in life are too important not to try. And that would be the advice I would give my 25-year-old.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really great advice. And let's talk about your case against AI 1.0. Your core argument is that AI 1.0, automation first, is really failing at scale, and everyone else is kind of racing towards that and putting that in everything they can. Can you make that case, and what does actually failing at scale mean, and what's the evidence there?
Yeah, I do believe it's failing at scale. Let's start with some data. If you look at some of the reports that have come out of McKinsey, or the best data point is actually the US Census. The last US Census report actually showed that enterprise adoption of generative AI in particular, which has really stolen the oxygen out of the room, is in retreat. Okay, so the enterprise is actually not adopting uh, enterprise AI the way it's being portrayed in terms of the narrative. And you can look at the data. 95% of all the AI pilots that have been introduced into the S&P 500 have failed. 95% have not gone to production. The reason is because, and this makes sense, it's because the large management consulting firms have their pedigree, have their heritage, have their basis of knowledge in the Industrial Revolution. Okay, a lot of the methodologies and the templates that they use, Henry Ford would recognize. And it's always coming at it from an automation perspective. It's always coming at it, this is the myopia, it's always coming at it as, if you put this technology into your factory, or you put this technology into your corporation, which is a factory the way they look at it. They look at it as, they deconstruct it into process, right? And they see all of these people in a process.
Right.
And they say, if you put that, you can automate it, you can improve efficiency, you can eliminate people, you can cut costs, you can save money. And that's like sex for a CFO. They can't resist that. And so that's really what the business model that sort of evolved out of generative AI. It was very specifically an automation business model. Now, the truth is that generative AI is a horrible automation tool. It's awful. Just think about it. I mean, it hallucinates. You can't rely on it. It'll give 5 different people 5 different answers for the same question.
Right.
This is all reality, right? It's like if you give a monkey a nail gun and you say, go build a house, the monkey's going to be firing nails all over the place, but I don't think the house is going to get built any faster. And so the whole paradigm was ill-conceived from the very beginning, because it all took off so quickly with GPT that it became this gold rush. And literally, if you stop and ask yourself, Lexi, Gabe, just ask yourself, what is the problem GPT was designed to solve? What was the problem it was designed to solve? It wasn't designed to solve a problem. It just kind of happened. So they had to reverse engineer it. And so it's failing at automation. The data is indisputable. Let me give you another data point. OpenAI loses more than $130 million a day.
Right.
Okay, now imagine that. How is that sustainable? It's not. Now, people will say, okay, well, back in the day, Amazon was losing money, Google was losing money, and, they figured it out, right? And that's the argument. But that argument is actually completely erroneous, completely false, because OpenAI's unit economics are upside down. Okay, so the more customers it has, the more it loses. the more its customers use its product, the more money it loses. Its variable costs are way, way more than the price it can charge. So as it grows, it loses more. Its economies of scale are inverse, whereas Amazon, Google's weren't. So the whole industry is really kind of, I think, it's intoxicated right now. And if you look at the data, you see that. And more people are seeing it. And there's all kinds of evidence that this is the case. Now, having said that, I really believe in AI. And I believe that AI is the greatest gift that humanity has ever been given. And I think that it's going to manifest itself in an extraordinarily positive, beneficial way. I think we have to work ourselves through the phase we're in right now. And I'd liken it to the internet, 99, 2000, the internet, internet 1.0 blew up, as it should have blown up. And internet 2.0 took off, and here we are today. So the technology will survive. And I do believe it will transform into what's usually called an augmentation model. But what I do believe is that it will become an extraordinary partner, and that we will look at automation as a way to do what we do better, not faster, to make ourselves smarter, not dumber, to just really become a thinking partner. And that's what it's really, really good at. And so that's sort of my view.
So do you think the dust is settling on that? Because I couldn't agree with you more that, it was a gold rush and people were just saying AI everything, fire all your teams, downsize your sales organization, downsize marketing, everything's going to be replaced with AI. And a lot of companies did that. And now I'm seeing many of those companies are starting to hire back those people.
They are.
And a lot of people are taking that point of view where they're saying, you know what?
They're just doing it quietly because they're a bit embarrassed about it. So they're not as loud about the, because right now what's happening is people are replacing AI with people, right? People are replacing AI with people right now. But you're not seeing the press releases because the stock market doesn't like that.
Right.
Right?
Yep. But they just released the job market. That's now going up. I track sales reps being hired because that's the industry I'm in. And 5 years ago it was an all-time high, and then it completely dropped because of the AI boom of the last 3 years. But now it's back up to 50% higher than what it was a year ago, and it's continually scaling from there. But you're right, no one's talking about it. But you still do believe in AI. So is the dust settling where people are starting to realize AI is your enabler, is your partner, is your enhancer of the human, or do you think it's still some ways to go before people start realizing that?
I think it's kind of early because, with all due respect to, say, a Fortune 500 CEO, we could all be Fortune 500 CEOs right now. It's really, really easy. Okay, here's the game plan. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to basically hire McKinsey. That makes us really smart, and our board loves it. And we're going to say, McKinsey, we want to be AI first. McKinsey's going to give us an 83-page PowerPoint presentation. That's going to make us AI first, and they're going to give us a press release that says we're AI first. And they're going to put a generative AI pilot somewhere in the basement. I'm going to issue the press release, and my stock price is going to go up. And then I'm going to announce a layoff. I'm going to cut people because I'm so brilliant and strategic with how I use AI. I'm going to have a massive layoff. And now that's like that, the stock market. Now they're just like buying their stock and it's going up. And if you really want extra credit, buy your stock back. And that's how you make a lot of money. And that's how that's how you basically build a business. That's the playbook. I mean, a monkey could do it. And that's very seductive. I'm honest that's what you do. That's how it's that easy. It really is. But you can only cut so much, right? At some point, there's a floor. And then you're going to wake up and you're going to realize, uh-oh, we've got to grow. We need to innovate. We need to compete. And at that point, I think there'll be this mad rush in the other direction. And we haven't quite gotten there yet. But there are companies that are sitting it out. You know, I mean, if you stop to think about it, I ask people this all the time. What is the one company in Silicon Valley that has completely sat out the AI insanity? There's one company.
What do they say?
I'm asking you, what is it, Lexi and Gabe?
Oh.
What's the
you say Apple?
single Apple? Okay. Apple Computer, or Apple now. That's showing my age. It used to be Apple Computer. Yeah, Apple. All right. There's a company that makes more money than anyone else.
Right.
There's a company that has more cash than anyone else, a more efficient supply chain, an extraordinary distribution channel, has had no real layoffs, whose customers love it. And so I do think there are CEOs and people out there that are able to resist the insanity. But then you got the opposite kind of a company. You got Oracle, who went all in because they really wanted to give themselves a paint job. You know, they didn't want to be a Jurassic database company. They wanted to be really cool. And they wanted to make a lot of money too. So they started basically investing all kinds of money on the supply side, building infrastructure, which is what they're all doing. And if you take a look at it and you look at it really carefully, what you're going to see is that their credit has been downgraded now pretty dramatically twice. And so you're starting to see the beginning, I think, of the end, which will then be the beginning of the new beginning. And so I do think that there's going to be companies that get this. I think on the technology side, there are companies that get it. I think Anthropic has kind of got one foot in and one foot out. I'm kind of pro Anthropic at this point. People like Mira Murati, who was the CTO at GPT, who left to start her own company, raised $2 billion, Thinking Machine Labs. I think she's brilliant. So I think there's a tremendous amount of early momentum moving in this new direction. I think Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan gets it. So I think you will see some of these leaders step up. And the only thing that they're missing is courage. That's really it. They're all smart. They just, it takes a lot of guts to stand apart from everyone else and do something different. And so eventually the courageous visionary CEOs will step up, and then everybody will just follow them in.
So, speaking of Apple, you've studied Steve Jobs deeply and drawn a lot of his approach. What's the insight from Jobs that most people really miss or misapply, and how does it show up in how you're building?
Yeah, I think I've probably studied just about everything you can about Steve Jobs. And I met him many years ago. I had 20 minutes alone with him. He was thinking about investing in a company that I was developing. And he didn't end up investing. But I basically had this meeting with him, and I'm rarely intimidated, but I was kind of intimidated in this meeting. And the last question I asked him on my way out was, I hate to ask you the cliche question, but I'm going to, which is, what is the one piece of advice you give somebody who really wanted to change the world? They really did. They were one of those people that were crazy, and they really thought they could. What piece of advice would you give them? And he said that I would tell them that innovation is never born. It's forced into creation, kicking and screaming against its will. And I love that, because it is hard. The world does not want to change.
Right.
It takes a lot of hard work. What is the single thing that I think I learned from him? Okay, the first one is that um, just an insane amount of fearlessness, courage. I mean, if you study the introduction of the Macintosh, 1984, what he did was he basically went around the board of directors at Apple, worked with Shia Day, and developed what is now a famous ad, the 1984 ad. And he ran it once on the Super Bowl, 60-second ad. And the board of directors ordered him not to run it. They said, you can't do this. This is the stupidest thing ever. You're a moron. There's no computer in it. Where's the computer in it? You know, like the ad should say, here's the Mac. Isn't it cute? Buy it. And he had the courage, as did Wozniak, to do something that was so daring. It was ridiculous. The amount of money he spent. He put his entire career on the line. And he did it because he believed in it. So have the courage of your convictions. Okay. B, he really, I think, took a deeply spiritual approach. People don't realize this, but the autobiography of a yogi was the operating manual for Apple. The autobiography of a yogi. And I highly recommend that people listening to this read that book. That was Steve Jobs' favorite book. It was the only book on his iPad. And in his will, he asked that that book be handed out to the folks that came to his memorial. It was a gift he gave everybody that came to his memorial. And he saw things at a really deep level. He, at one point said he wanted to put Aristotle in everybody's pocket. He, I think, asked the five whys. If you think about it, he went really deep. So, why does anybody want a computer? So they can do things faster. They can do things easier. Why does somebody want to do things faster? Why does somebody want to do things easier? Well, because they want to be, at the end of the day, they want to be something. They want to become something. Why do they want to become something? Well, because people are inherently, we all have an inherent desire to have an impact. We all want to make a difference. And he went all the way down to the point where what he was selling was empowerment. He was selling this idea that deep down in each of us, there is this extraordinary desire to do something great. None of us want to wake up in the morning and be a cog in a machine. Nobody wants to die that way. And so while everyone else was introducing technology that the corporation loved, that was really about control and centralization, like what AI is doing now, he went around all of them and sold this diabolical product that was going to empower people. And he shook things up. He went rogue. And I don't think people remember. You're both too young to remember. But he, when the Macintosh came out, if you used it, you had to use it kind of quietly, unless you were like a really crazy, freaky, creative type. Unless you were like in the creative industry, you couldn't use a Mac. If you brought it into your company, you were marked. Like you were like, what? What's that doing here? That's a silly little toy.
Right.
And so the answer to your question, he had courage. He was he operated at a deeper level than I think most people operate at. And when he said, think different, it wasn't a tagline. It was a sort of an operating system that he was giving humanity. He was saying, you got to think different. That's the only way you're going to make a difference. You got to think different. And then when he said, it's the crazy ones that make a difference, he essentially was saying that, that it's okay to be crazy. It's okay. It's all right. You can be different. You can be crazy. You can ask really silly questions. All the geniuses did. They all did. And so I think that was what he brought to humanity. And it was a philosophy, it was a vision. And I know I'm going on, but I often imagine, in fact, I wrote a blog about this the other day, but if you put Steve Jobs into a room and you put Bill Gates into a room today and you ask them to design an AI, what would they design? Right?
What do you think that would be?
It would,
What
I
would you,
know,
what's your,
what it would be. I know what it would be. Bill Gates would design like a DOS operating system that he could sell to IT and MIS guys in corporate world to try and give them efficiencies, improve process, and control. And Steve Jobs would figure out a way to put Aristotle in everybody's pocket. Steve Jobs would, like he said, he would try and develop a bicycle for our mind. And what Gates would do is what the whole Gen AI industry is doing right now, is designing wheelchairs for our mind. And so they'd come at it from such a fundamentally different place. The problem is the business model for what Steve Jobs wants to do or would want to do isn't as obvious. Okay, that's the challenge. So when you build an augmentation technology and you want to introduce it into the enterprise, the ROI isn't quite as easily defined. So in other words, if I go into a company and I've got an automation tool and I say to the CFO, this is a brilliant tool, install it, fire 10,000 people, improve your efficiencies, think about all the money you're going to save, your margins go up, your stock price goes up. It's all instant gratification. But if I go in and say, I've got an augmentation tool, I've got a tool that's going to elevate, it's going to make your people better, it's going to make you more innovative, it's going to grow your revenue, that's a bet on the future. That's not as easy a decision for a company to make, because that's the difference between an investment in the future and turning, your company into an ATM machine and extracting cash now. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you've built over 70,000 followers on LinkedIn by deliberately breaking every LinkedIn algorithm rule. What does that actually mean in practice, and why did breaking the rules really work for you when following them would it have?
I'm not really sure why. I don't necessarily know. Because I don't. But I think my theory is that because I didn't try and please people, right? I wasn't writing to please people. I was trying to share thoughts that I believed were important. Rightly or wrongly, I genuinely believed they were important. And I wasn't doing it so I'd get people to agree with me or like me. I was doing it so that people would at least be aware of that point of view, whether they agreed or didn't, and could potentially discuss it and argue about it. And it manifested kind of as a contrarian perspective. 2-3 years ago, I was saying things about generative AI that were sort of, sacrilegious. I thought I'd get thrown off LinkedIn, quite frankly, because, Sam Altman was God. He was not just God. He was also Christ, Moses, and Buddha. And now people are realizing he's not. And what I attribute that to is that I had the courage in my convictions. I wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. And I also supported my point of view with data. I was able to, because I teach market research at Berkeley, and because I studied it at Harvard, I know how to do research. And I knew how to find the research that was the real research. Okay, because most of the research that you read right now on social media is sponsored by the industry. Okay, about 80% of it. So it's the research that they're sharing is research designed to propel the narrative they want propelled to continue the business model they're monetizing. And so it was also partly being able to support my point of view with data. So, don't take it from, don't believe me, believe the University of Chicago, right? If I go out on LinkedIn, look, a year and a half ago, I went out on LinkedIn and I said there are no net job losses because of AI in the United States of America. Zero. People think you're insane, because that's all people were saying is they were cutting people because of AI. But University of Chicago studied it. You just didn't read the research because there was no money put behind it because it wasn't beneficial to the industry. And sure enough, there's research to support that point. But that was insane to say that. Now people, I think, are beginning to realize that maybe that is true. Maybe that is true. There aren't net job losses in the United States because of AI. There aren't. I mean, there are, in the sense that companies are overspending on it and they have to come up with the money somewhere else because it's not materializing in ROI, so they're cutting people. But it's not because of efficiencies. It's not because the technology is so amazing or these guys are such geniuses that they're implementing this brilliant. So I would attribute it to just, again, I guess coming back to saying things that I genuinely believed mattered, that other people weren't saying because they were afraid. People were really afraid. I think people still are afraid to stand up to the industry. It's very powerful. I mean, if you're in the academic world or you're working in the corporate world, you got to be careful. It's almost like a religion, And I'm kind of like, I don't buy your religion. I don't buy it at all. I don't. Not into it. It's bullshit.
So let's talk about fear as my last question, and content in LinkedIn, what we were just saying. Because again, there's a lot of growth happening on LinkedIn. There's a lot of people seeing the value of posting consistently and creating a personal brand and not a company brand through LinkedIn. So is it worth it? That's my question. Like, should people be posting regardless of their position or title right now on LinkedIn in their professional career? And is the time, is the research, is the value of writing their position worth it in the long run, especially even for founders?
I believe that the American economy is essentially fragmenting very, very quickly. In fact, it's predicted that half of all U.S. workers will be on their own by next year, 50%. Okay? Gen Z unemployment is 2 to 3 times the national average. So if you assume that there is this massive movement to sort of the professional gig worker, the fractional person, the advisor, the consultant, the entrepreneur, the startup, and that is where this is headed. These people are going to have to find ways to support themselves. And they're going to become very, very creative. And I think the way they're going to do that is by making themselves visible on social media. I think that's where this goes. I think LinkedIn's going to become dramatically more important. I don't know if they get this. I don't know if they see this yet. I think that LinkedIn is going to be massively more successful, because if you do get laid off from a company, with 1.2 million people let go over the past, 10 months to a year, those jobs aren't coming back anytime soon. The economy, the world is changing. What are you going to do? Right? You're going to start a company, probably a consulting firm, advisory firm, maybe it's finance, it's engineering, it's marketing, and you're going to look for some clients. And how are you going to do that? You don't have a big budget. Well, you can push your network as far as you can, but I think the way you're going to do that is you're going to have to become visible on social media. And the way you can become visible on social media is not by telling the world how great you are or promoting yourself, because everyone's going to do that. It's going to be by sharing ideas and being a thought leader that resonates with people. And you're going to build a community around that. And that community, you don't need a lot of clients to be successful. You need kindred spirits. And I think we're going to start seeing all of these communities. And in a lot of ways, it is going to take us back to before the Industrial Revolution. In a really weird way, this incredibly modern, sophisticated technology is going to bring us to the past. Because before the Industrial Revolution, we were all entrepreneurs, pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, guild, even the farm, agriculture was entrepreneurial.
Right.
Until the corporation came around, and the Industrial Revolution came around. So I think in a lot of ways, we're going to end up becoming much more entrepreneurial. And as scary as that is, I think it's wonderful in a weird way, because 70-80% of all new jobs are created by entrepreneurs in this country. The corporations aren't creating new jobs. It's people like us, it's people like us that are creating these jobs. And so I do think that social media will become increasingly important. And I do believe people are going to need to learn to use it in different ways if in fact they want to build their entrepreneurial ventures, because they're not going to have big budgets. They're going to have to do it organically. And without, directly promoting my company, Curiouser.ai, and I know I'm not here to do that. That is actually the primary use case we're addressing right now with our technology. Is we are doing our best to be the platform for all of these entrepreneurs, I'm like 86 million, and growing rapidly, to help them find ways to become more visible, to market themselves, because not everyone's good at that. And so, I think LinkedIn is going to become really important. Right now, there's 1.1 billion, 1.2 billion people on that platform. That's crazy.
Yes.
And what people don't realize, I like to experiment with it. About a month or two ago, I decided that I would, the conventional wisdom, okay, if you want to really be good at LinkedIn, is you post 3 times a week at the same time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, around mid-morning, right? Short posts, try to be controversial, whatever. But I never did that. And what I started doing, I just started doing this recently. It's like a month ago, 2 months ago. I started posting at night because I realized Asia was waking up. And I thought, I'll talk to Asia.
Right.
There's the world beyond San Francisco and New York. And I found this entirely new group of people that I'm talking with, and it's wonderful. It's fantastic. But you have to break the rules to do that. That's stupid to post at night, or I post on weekends. There's some weekends. There are some Saturday mornings when I've posted, where I'd wake up Sunday and I'd have another 1,000 followers. And it was like, that wasn't supposed to happen. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's some, you can have fun with it. Just break the rules.
No, it's funny.
Go rogue.
Yeah.
Go rogue.
Lexi and I started posting on the weekend. We're like, should we do it? And we're like, well, of course we should do it, because no one else is doing it. And that's, you're going to
Are you seeing the same? Are you seeing what isn't it fun? Because people have time, and and even if you don't necessarily get as many impressions, the engagement's deeper because people are being more thoughtful. The discussions can be deeper. I have found on LinkedIn enormous benefit. Let me just, a couple things that have happened to me that have really changed my life. One is I've met extraordinarily wonderful people. I met you.
Yes. Yeah.
If it weren't for LinkedIn, we wouldn't be talking right now. I probably get 100 DMs a day. And a lot of them are from really, really smart people sharing ideas with me. Somehow I've become this thing that people want to share ideas with. And so
Right.
I'm learning a lot. And a lot of the trends and a lot of the thought leadership comes at me. And I've met amazing people and I, I, I I built communities and it's been extraordinary for me. Despite, we all know the problems of social media. LinkedIn's got the problems are no secret. I mean, it's awful in so many ways. Just awful in so many ways, but there is an awful lot of amazingly positive, good things about all social media if you go into it with that attitude and you try and turn it into something you want it to be, that you want it to be.
Right. Right. So in closing, let's plug the business. Who is it that's out there in our audience that you want to talk to and why? And also what would be the best way for them to reach out?
Okay. Yeah. Right now we are currently building, and we have two products in the market. One we call Alice and one we call Looking Glass. Both of them are designed primarily for entrepreneurs, founders, creators, people who are doing their best to create something new. It could be a company, it could be an idea, it could be a product, it could be a consulting idea, whatever. And the products are designed to meet that need because the entire AI industry is building products for the enterprise. So I don't know many other companies that are building products for the entrepreneur because conventional wisdom and the investors in Silicon Valley think that's a silly thing to do. So we're basically targeting at entrepreneurs. The first product, Alice, is designed to help somebody think through their business. It challenges the user. It asks questions. It encourages critical thinking. And it is a way that you can kind of find the deeper way of positioning and differentiating yourself as a business so that you can really stand out. And it's sort of like, I'd like to think that it's Steve Jobs in a sense. It's Steve Jobs, it's Socrates, it's the Toyota Five Whys, and it's Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and there's a little Mad Hatter thrown in there. But it's an AI that basically challenges you and it asks you questions. So it doesn't perform tricks, doesn't jump through hoops, and doesn't get your coffee. And it slows you down. It's not for everybody. It's for people who want to think. So that's the first product. The second product, Looking Glass, is a product that enables somebody to literally become a thought leader. It's thought leadership. And the way it works is that it's an anti-slot machine. The way it works is that the first module is a configuration module. And what we've done, and I don't know if anyone else is doing this, is we basically drill down and try to learn as much about you as we possibly can. And so you're customizing the AI and making it personal to you. And so, for example, we'll ask questions like, who are the people you respect most in the world? What mentors, what advisors? And we'll give you some ideas like Clayton Christensen, Steve Jobs, Brene Brown. But then you can put your own in: Abraham Lincoln, Taylor Swift, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. It doesn't matter. But when you give us who those people are, you've now trained the AI to, at a very deep level, know what matters to you, right? It's a shortcut. It's a hack that we figured out. The other thing is we then have those people interview you as you're developing content and challenge you so that you can then produce ideas and produce content. And so those are sort of those are the two products that we've got in the market. We're at Curiouser.ai. Curiouser as in Alice in Wonderland. And the story there is, it's just as simple as I used to read it. I used to read the story. I have boy-girl twins, they're 26. But when they were little, I would read Alice in Wonderland to them and we would just love it. She's real to me. Lewis Carroll said that imagination was the only weapon in the war against reality. And I've kind of always believed that. So we're also raising capital. We decided not to pursue institutional capital. I've raised like $100 million in my past in previous ventures. So really all I know is the VC world because of the Harvard network. But this is my first foray into crowdfunding. And the thinking there is that I really want to try and democratize and turn customers into investors, investors into customers, and I guess monetize the community and build this thing together. So we're on WeFunder right now, raising capital. It's going well. We've raised almost $500,000 altogether. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing to stay out of trouble or to stay in trouble.
Well, thank you so much again, Stephen. We are so appreciative of your time, your wisdom. We're gonna get this out to our audience as soon as possible because it's just filled with so much nuggets, and we appreciate you. And
One more thing. Spinoza, the philosopher, said that there is nothing in this world that is excellent that isn't difficult or hard. So doing the hard things is the same thing as saying doing the truly excellent things, the truly great things. If you want to do something great, it's going to be hard. So thank you for doing what you do.
we appreciate that, and we appreciate you being on the show and living the philosophy of what we are talking about on our show every day. So thank you so much, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.